Well, I didn't think I'd be reviving this channel, but here we are. Anyways, I'm Mars, and this is my channel dedicated to mental health. I wanted to get this up and running again to share my story with mental health so that those that struggle with it will feel less alone, and those that are unfamiliar with it can gain a better understanding. I'm diagnosed with bipolar disorder, social anxiety disorder, ADHD, and an eating disorder. So those are kind of the topics I'm going to be focusing on mainly. I'm not qualified to speak on disorders that I don't have because I'm not a doctor or a clinician or anything like that, nor have I had any formal education in psychology unless you count Psych 101. That's why I'll be linking resources under my videos related to that video's topic. This video is about bipolar disorder, and I'm going to give a general overview of what it is, my own story, and coping skills that I found helpful, and just coping skills that I've learned about in general. I already made a video about bipolar disorder, but it just wasn't the best. Like, it was the first pancake of videos. So anyways, consider this take two. Alright, so take two. What is bipolar disorder? Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder, and it's characterized by mania and depression. The name bipolar is actually a little bit misleading because there's 4 types of episodes. There's mania, depression, hypomania, which is a less severe form of mania, and mixed episodes, which is where you experience mania and depression at the same time. I'll get into that later. And there's actually more than one type of bipolar disorder. There's types 1 and 2, and there's cyclothymia. Cyclothymia is a less severe form of bipolar disorder, and it fizzles out after a few years. Type 1 and type 2 are lifelong mental illnesses. The distinction between type 1 and type 2 is in type 1 you'll experience a full-blown manic episode, and that doesn't happen in type 2, it stops at hypomania. And the distinction between those in cyclothymia is cyclothymia consists of like hypomania and like mild depression. But I want to get into the first episode that I'm going to talk about, which is bipolar depression. I went and retrieved a fidget toy because I hate talking with my hands, but I wanted to start talking about bipolar depression by describing the symptoms. It's actually pretty much the same thing as unipolar depression. I mean, obviously the difference between the two is in unipolar depression you don't have any type of manic episode, but the symptoms are essentially the same. Symptoms include obviously feeling depressed, down, sad, lack of hygiene, changes in eating patterns, which could cause like fluctuation in weight, so either weight gain or weight loss is a symptom. Changes in sleeping patterns, whether it's like insomnia or sleeping too much. Feeling like guilt and like worthlessness is a symptom. Other symptoms include fatigue, like loss of energy, and decreased ability to concentrate and think clearly. It might be difficult to make decisions or follow a TV show. And as depression gets more severe, symptoms like slowed down speech and movement are common, and unfortunately, suicidal thoughts. So for something to be classified as a depressive episode, it has to last at least 2 weeks, and it can last much longer than that, like months. I can attest to that. And the longer you go without treatment, the longer it lasts. So getting help as soon as symptoms start is really important. For me, depression can look like a range of things. It can be mild, which is kind of like a light sadness for me, just not really like having the motivation to do important tasks, but I can still kind of do things that I enjoy. And it can get as bad as not being able to get out of bed to go get food or water and ending up getting dehydrated. And, unfortunately, it can lead to suicidal thoughts. When it's bad, it almost feels physically painful. I remember I had a depressive episode at the start of quarantine, so like a little over a year ago, and I remember saying to my mom, I just want to bash my head against the wall until the depression comes out of my ears. And I don't know, that's just the perfect description of what it feels like for me. Psychosis is generally more common in mania rather than depression, but it can definitely happen. And psychosis can also occur in unipolar depression. So I can't think of a whole lot of differences between unipolar and bipolar depression, other than someone with unipolar will never experience a different type of episode, and SSRIs will work for them. SSRIs are a type of antidepressant, and when given to someone with bipolar disorder, they will very likely become manic, and that's how a lot of people are actually diagnosed. They come in with depression, are given an SSRI, and then they're in for a world of shock. So I'm gonna use that to segue into the next type of episode I want to talk about, which is mania/hypomania. So mania and hypomania are essentially the opposite of depression. Some people with bipolar disorder actually like manic episodes. Well, like when you feel euphoric and it's like kind of fun, like yes, but you know, obviously when it turns into psychosis and like blowing money and like getting hospitalized, yeah, no one likes mania at that point. So I kind of touched upon some of the symptoms already, but the symptoms that make up mania and hypomania are feeling upbeat and wired, having increased energy, which can present itself as agitation as well. A decreased need for sleep is like one of like the staple signs of mania, for lack of a better word. Another symptom is pressured speech, and that's where you talk really loud and really fast, and you're just really excited about what you're talking about, and you feel like you can't stop. It's almost like you're talking just to talk. Another symptom is racing thoughts. It just feels like your brain is yelling. Like it's just so chaotic, and there's so many different ideas running through your head, and you just feel like anything's possible. And that's kind of where goal-directed activity comes in, and that's where you get super focused on whatever activity your brain deems is important at that point in time, and you just get sucked into that for hours, cannot get pulled away from it, and then you just kind of drop it and forget about it a few days later. Other symptoms include impulsivity and euphoria. Those two are kind of related. Euphoria can lead to impulsivity because people may feel like they're invincible and that nothing bad will happen, but that's not the case. And another symptom, just like depressive episodes, is psychosis. And again, psychosis is super common with mania and bipolar 1, and that's the main difference between mania and hypomania. Is mania, you will reach psychosis. Hypomania is a much less severe form, and it never requires hospitalization. Manic episodes generally require hospitalization. There's also a length difference. A manic episode has to last at least 7 days, and a hypomanic episode has to last at least 4. But the symptoms are generally the same. Hypomania is just at a lower intensity. I generally have more depressive episodes than manic episodes, but mania for me generally feels like just being invincible. I usually get like intense euphoria. I have run away to Florida during a manic episode. Sleep is like next to impossible. If I do try to sleep while I'm having a manic episode, you just stare at the ceiling. Or during that time, I'll pick up some new hobbies. I will start like art projects and never finish them. There's so many unfinished like drawings and paintings I have, just stuff like that. And then this I think is kind of like grandiosity, but I will almost develop like a weird obsession with myself. But it's like I will spend a good chunk of time just lip syncing lyrics in front of the mirror and just kind of like recording it with my phone. I don't post anywhere. I just like keep it for me to look at and just like admire myself. So initially, like, those symptoms almost feel fun, but then it gets out of hand for me, and after like a while of not sleeping, you know, I'll start like crashing for 4 hours, get up, go back to business. You know, you start to like get like really big dark circles under your eyes, and that's like kind of the least of your problems. But you know, eventually psychosis does happen, and that it's not so fun anymore when you're paranoid that you're gonna get possessed or something crazy like that. And then for me, hypomania, like, it feels like diet mania. I mean, obviously, but I don't really get a whole lot of like negative symptoms with a hypomanic episode, although sometimes I do get very agitated, but I don't have hypomanic episodes very often. I mean, not gonna lie, Florida was fun, but when I came back, I did have to quit my job before I got fired. So it does mess with your life. Like, it does totally turn it upside down every time you have an episode. So it's not so fun after that. But I think the type of episode that I struggle with the most is mixed episodes. Those are the worst for me, and I think a lot of people with bipolar disorder would agree. So a mixed episode is when you're experiencing mania and depression at the same time. It can be like predominantly mania with depressive symptoms, or predominantly depression with manic symptoms, or you can meet the full criteria for both. Mixed episodes are actually the most dangerous type of episode. There's the highest risk for suicide. And about half of people with bipolar disorder will have a mixed episode at some point in their life. Mixed episodes last at least a week. And the manic symptoms in a mixed episode tend to be more anger rather than euphoria. For me, a mixed episode feels like fast depression, or it can mean switching back and forth between manic and depressed, like constantly throughout the day. And yeah, I definitely notice more anger when I'm having a mixed episode rather than a manic episode, and the impulsivity tends to be more reckless, like in a self-harm way almost. And again, you can have psychosis with a mixed episode. It's about as common as having it with a manic episode. So leading into that, I'm finally going to explain what psychosis is and the difference between positive and negative symptoms and how it presents in bipolar. So with psychosis, there are positive and negative symptoms, and people misinterpret that all the time, thinking it means like there's like good symptoms of psychosis and bad symptoms of psychosis, which is, no, they're all bad. Positive symptoms, what that means is it's adding something to your reality. Psychosis is any type of break from reality. So hallucinations, delusions, that's adding something to your reality. Negative symptoms is when something is taken away, like blunted affect, which is when you like lose the ability to express emotions, which is similar to the inability to feel happiness if you're experiencing negative symptoms of psychosis. But I'm going to go ahead and explain what positive and negative symptoms actually are. Positive symptoms would include hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations include all 5 senses. There is tactile, auditory, visual, and tactile, auditory, visual. I think it's called olfactory. That's when you smell something that isn't there. And then there's taste, and I don't know the term for that one, but it's when you taste something that is not there. So we have an outfit change and new hair. I had to step away from making this for a week, but I'm back, so let's continue. So negative symptoms when it comes to psychosis, what defines negative symptoms is that it takes something away from your reality. So having a monotone voice, losing the ability to express emotions, not keeping up with personal hygiene, having a lack of interest in things, blunted affect, which is where you can't physically express emotion. Those are all things that take something away from your reality. So half of people with bipolar experience psychosis. Positive symptoms are more common with manic episodes. Negative symptoms are more common with depressive episodes. There's something called mood incongruent episodes, which is where you may be depressed but having positive symptoms of psychosis, or you're manic and having depressive symptoms of psychosis, and mood incongruent episodes are considered like one of the most dangerous. So while I'm at it, I'm going to clear up the difference between schizoaffective disorder and bipolar disorder. Schizoaffective disorder, the difference between bipolar with psychotic features and schizoaffective is that with schizoaffective, you will have just straight up psychotic episodes with no mood episode, or you could have an episode with mood features as well as psychotic features, but with bipolar disorder, you will never have a straight up psychotic episode. So I wanted to touch upon my experience with psychosis. So I mostly have auditory hallucinations, and at first it was really frightening, but then I kind of got used to it, especially when the hallucinations are repetitive. It's kind of like, alright, here we go with this bullshit again. I generally hear my name being called, or this is kind of wild, but I'll hear like a Great Gatsby party going on in the other room. Or I'll hear like two women fighting over like what to do with me, which is kind of wild. I do have some visual hallucinations sometimes. It doesn't go beyond seeing shadow people run by the corner of my eyes, or like really watching the walls breathe. That's about it for like visual hallucinations. I don't have them very often. I've had delusions as well. The one right off the bat that I can think of was from last summer, when I was paranoid about becoming possessed, and I was afraid that I was under constant attack of being possessed, so I wore a scapular at all times. And if it wasn't a situation where it could go around my neck, it was on my wrist, it was on my ankle, it had to be on me, in case I was in a situation where I was going to get possessed, which was never going to happen. And the way I can tell something is a hallucination or a delusion, delusions, I have no idea until someone points it out to me and I believe them, or I'll have my meds changed and then that thought will go away and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not an alien, that was a delusion. Alright, cool. And then hallucinations, that's actually not super hard to figure out if it's real or not, because what you can do is, if you're having auditory hallucinations, get up and walk around and see if the volume of what you're hearing changes, and if it doesn't, it's probably a hallucination. So there's different things that trigger bipolar episodes, and that can be SSRIs, which are a type of antidepressant. So if you haven't had a manic episode yet, they're probably going to hit you with an SSRI thinking it's regular depression, and then surprise, it's bipolar. Seasons changing can trigger episodes, alcohol, drugs, all that type of stuff. There's also rapid cycling bipolar, which I happen to have. It's loads of fun. Kidding. With rapid cycling, that means you have 4 or more mood episodes in a year, or it can mean it's just episode after episode after episode until you can finally break free from that cycle. Common med combinations for treating bipolar are usually a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic. Sometimes if you have more depressive episodes, they'll prescribe you an antidepressant as well, which happens to be my case. And then sometimes benzo, I only know the street name, benzo. Sometimes a benzo might be added in as well, specifically Klonopin. About 2% of the population has bipolar. Bipolar reduces your life expectancy by 10 to 20 years. The mortality rate is 4 to 19%. The attempt rate is 25 to 60%. And the percentage of people with bipolar disorder that abuse substances is 60%. And it's about just as common in women as it is in men. So those are just some stats on bipolar disorder. I also wanted to share how I cope with depression, mania, and psychosis. Depression, I don't want to say it's easy to cope with, but there's things you can do to help yourself other than medication and therapy. Like, getting outside is super important for me. That has helped me get my head out of the water. Making a daily schedule. This is today's schedule. I've already checked some things off. And another big thing that I've started doing is changing how I talk to myself in my head. My internal monologue is usually pretty mean and nasty, So being more forgiving and more gentle with myself has boosted my self-esteem and boosted my confidence, which has really helped with depressive episodes. Another thing, socializing is key, and when you're in a deep, dark spot, depression-wise, making a list of goals, like a schedule for the day, that might be very difficult. So in that case, what I would recommend is making one small goal a day. Even if it's something like wiping the crumbs off your bed sheets or taking a shower, having one small goal like that can help you get your head out of it. And then with mania, I have no idea how to cope with mania. I really don't. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I'm hoping like there's other people with bipolar that are like, I don't know how to cope with this. Like, is it a common experience that like no one teaches you how to cope with mania? Because all I know how to do is go to therapy and take medication, and that's about it. And then with psychosis, like I said, I usually have auditory hallucinations. So the way I distract myself from that is by watching movies or listening to music. Yeah, so distraction is key with auditory hallucinations. If you can occupy your mind, you're less likely to have hallucinations just repeat for hours on end. And then just reminding yourself that it's not real once you figure out that it's not real. Like I said, delusions, I have no idea that it's a delusion until my meds are changed or someone points it out to me and I believe them. And then when it comes to negative symptoms with psychosis, again, medication and therapy, that's all I really know how to do for that one. So to wrap this up, I just wanted to say that I'm going to link resources down below in this video, and, you know, check out my TikTok. I think it's linked, I'm not sure, but it's Stardust Stoner with a 0 for the O in stoner, all one word, because TikTok makes you censor that stuff. And check out my Instagram, stardust.stoner. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I will be more than happy to answer them. And thank you for watching.